out, then it is the buyer's responsibility to pay the whole year's taxes. And they're usually paid through what? Escrow. Because when they close on the property, then their escrow is going to have a couple of months' money in there to carry them and pay the taxes for that year. Anybody else have any questions on prorations? What are special assessments?
Anything that you have to do to the house, to a neighborhood, be like, you have to repave your neighborhood, and HOA assesses everybody, that's a special assessment. Sort of.
Sort of. Usually your HOA is going to give you an assessment, and they will set it up through your HOA payments that it's going to be paid. And at closing, the seller should typically pay that assessment also. The buyer's going in with no assessment. The other assessments are like street paving, sidewalks, street lights, anything that the city or the county have done to improve your property in front, and then they assess you. Sewer systems are the big ones that we do right now because they're going through the entire county and they're trying to include more people into the public utility system to get them off of septic systems and wells. And so those are the big assessments that we have right now. There are a lot of neighborhoods undergoing those, which when you're taking your clients out, you have to see them. Because the homes that they're going for right now over in the Silverterra area and Arrowhead and up that way into those neighborhoods, those are the homes right now that are valued less than $200,000. And they're the #1 homes that we're selling in the market right now. So those are the ones you got to pay close attention to and make sure that the assessment is being paid because they have all received letters. Some of them might have up in the neighborhoods that they haven't hit yet, they've received letters of a future assessment that is going to happen. But they haven't started work and they haven't given them a dollar amount. But you need to be aware of them when you're working with your clients that they're going to be assessed because that fee is typically about $3,500 right now. And so you want to make sure that if they're in a neighborhood like Arrowhead, where that neighborhood is already being converted over and they're in the middle of it, that they pay that assessment so that your buyers don't have to pay that in the future. And it is part of your contract. If you read your contract, when you type it up, it states in there, are there any special assessments? And if so, who's responsible for them? And if you know it, you need to type it in there and make it the responsibility of the seller. Any other questions on special assessments?
So,
Yeah.
like the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority is going out and doing these special assessments, and then if they did it in my neighborhood, I'm forced to pay the assessment, and then I can no longer use my septic system or my well. I'm a customer of theirs now.
You hear what Johnny asked? Basically, he's saying that if he's on a septic and a well, and Cape Fear Public Utilities comes out and decides they're going to put in septic and public water, is he no longer able to use the septic system and well? And I can tell you that typically the answer to that is yes. Now, they're not forcing people on water. Typically, if they run a water line, in some cases, based on where you're located, they will allow the homeowner to maintain their well and continue drawing water from their well. Because you have to pay for the connection from the street to your house. They're only charging you $3,500 to run the pipe in front of your house. So to connect it to your home is going to cost another $1,000 to $1,500 per each one.
So I'm having to pay to be their customer.
But the benefits of what Cape Fear Public Utilities versus having a well or septic. But yes.
Okay.
But now, if you're on a septic system, they're going to convert. You're going to be converted over. They're not going to allow you to continue using a septic system. Those people do get converted over, and they'll give you a time frame. It's not like the day this happens, you got to do it, but they will send you a letter. And they're going to tell you this needs to happen within this time frame. But on water, typically I've known some people that have never switched over, but then when they sell the house, the lender's gonna make them switch over. And if they're on a government loan, they're gonna be forced to switch over. Because if you have water running in front of your home and you have not converted over, on any government loan, they're gonna make you.
And if my house is for sale, and then I get hit with the assessment, I have to pay the assessment prior to selling the house.
Yes. You'll prior to, it'll come out of your money at closing. So you don't have to prepay it
Okay.
If you make it.
if you make money. And most people in our market today should be making money if they're gonna sell a home. The only ones that are not gonna benefit from that are short sales, and et cetera. Those are the ones that are gonna hurt some. But if you're honestly in this market today, you should be making decent money on your home. If you're not, you probably shouldn't be selling your home today unless you have to. Any other questions on special assessment? Because they're big right now. I mean, Cape Fear Public Utilities Association, in case you're not aware of it, they have, I mean, they're out in almost all the neighborhoods. They're even up on Middletown Loop. So, I mean, you're gonna get hit pretty soon. For anybody that's up in that area and all the way going south towards Carolina Beach, their goal is to hit all those areas and put in water and sewer. Have you already run into it, Johnny?
No, I've had issues with the Public Utility Authority before. I'm sure everybody in the room has.
That's a totally different
Yeah.
subject and not one for tonight. Okay. If I'm a seller, when should I get my proceeds from the sale of my property?
After closing?
After closing. And settlement is not closing, correct? Your settlement is when your client goes in and signs all the documentation and they have agreed to move forward with the purchase. And then it's after the attorney records it with the Register of Deeds, it's closed. The ownership has transferred. At that point, then the attorney will either issue a cashier's check or out of their trust fund, or they'll wire the funds. If there's any money coming back to the buyer, they can pick up a check. So different, but not till after it's recorded. Yes,
If the
Pam?
buyer has to bring money to the closing, can they write a check or put it on a credit card, or does it always have to be certified funds?
Did you hear what Pamela had to ask? And reality is it is wired. Very few attorneys today will accept checks. And probably, I will tell you, most attorneys will accept a personal check if it's less than $5,000. If it's over $5,000, it's going to be wired. And most often now, because you all have heard about all the issues with wiring money and checks and et cetera, if you bring a personal check, that check has to clear. Now, if it's less, typically they're gonna go ahead and write it, and I've never had one hold a personal check, because most of them are small. But I've actually had a client who showed up after we had said they were gonna get wiring instructions from the attorney and to verify them, and the attorney called them to make sure they knew to wire the money. They went to the bank, and because it was gonna cost them $35 to wire the funds, they got a certified check for $350,000. Well, guess what the attorney did at the table? We can't take this check. You've got to go back to your bank and have the money wired. And the reason they do this is because of bad checks. I mean, you think that people are honest, but you and I both know that there are a lot of things going out there today and causing all the honest people to suffer. Because now there are people out there doing loan wire fraud and check fraud. And check fraud is one of the worst because they're taking a certified check, and even if they think that that check is good, it could be a bad check. And then when it comes back from the bank, so now what they're doing is they're gonna hold that check 10 days. They're gonna send it into the bank, they're gonna wait for those funds to be deposited, and then they'll go to record. They're not gonna record, they're not gonna disperse funds, they're not gonna do anything until that check clears. And what happens if you do a certified check and it comes back and they wait 10 days? I don't believe any of you would have handled this situation because pretty much everybody's required to wire funding since you've gotten your license. But what happens is most lenders are gonna require the buyer to come back and sign loan docs because they're not gonna let that loan stand out there for 10 days without it being recorded. Because what happens is you've got issues with interest on the house. The sellers are still owning the property 10 days later. And so everything changes number-wise on the CDs. And so they won't allow you to go 10 days. They might wait a weekend. They'll usually, on a Thursday, they'll wait till Friday for it to be recorded. If it's a Friday, they may wait till Monday. And there are a few of them out there that I've seen wait a day or so, but they're not going to wait 10 days and allow that loan to go through without signing new loan documents. It doesn't happen. So you're gonna wire money, and it's better. And now typically, again, they're gonna pay for that wire charge, but they also need to make sure that they deal directly with the attorney's office on getting the wiring information. Do not give your clients the wiring information. Because what happens is because of all the fraud that's going on, if the attorney sends you their wiring information, you've been dealing with the attorney, you know the attorney. And so you give the wiring information, but in the process of them sending it to you, somebody has hacked into the computer, your email, and they have sent you an email saying this is the wiring information, and you pull up the last one, and then you forward it to your client, and they wire $400,000 to some offshore account somewhere. You do not want that to come back to you. So just keep in mind that all that wiring information needs to be from the attorney directly to the buyer and let them wire those funds. But thank you, Pamela, that was a good question. Any other questions on that? Do you pick up money for your clients and distribute it to them after closing? You should. You should never go to the attorney's office, and even if you're a buyer, or pick up your seller's checks and take to them, because that's putting you as a middleman. And what happens if you lose a check? You picked up the check. And then typically the attorney's not gonna write a check immediately. They're gonna wait to see that check clears the bank. They'll cancel it. And then they'll rewrite one, but it could be a week to 2 weeks before that happens. But just make sure for your protection that you let the buyers and the sellers pick up their own checks, or that they have the money wired to their accounts. Any other questions about this brochure? So everybody's good with that. Okay, let's take a minute. We're gonna have some fun. Y'all want some fun? We are going to wait crossword. If you will, I'd like for you to get at least groups of 3 or 4, and y'all work on these together. It'll make it go a little bit quicker, and y'all be able to help each other. And if you'll take a few minutes to go through these, then we'll run through the answers real quick. And be grateful, this is not an exam. This is not anything that matters if you got right or wrong. So everybody gets one.
Yeah. Groups of 4.
Yeah, group of 3 or 4. Rebecca, you wanna move over and get Johnny and Mary?
You're good.
7 o'clock, idling truck. I think so.
Actually, yeah, I think you're right. Just one.
That's good. There's nothing wrong with it.
That's why I'm not confused.
I don't have one, so I'm playing boldly.
Is that due diligence?
Probable market.
Appraisal.
Oh, due diligence.
It's not about line. That's just looking at your line. Do 9 across the appraisal, both market value.
Yeah.
So 4 down. Designation would be,
Patricia, you got 2%.
putting our heads together.
How are you? Probably doing.
Okay.
I'm waiting to see who gets 3 down.
Where's the?
How are y'all doing?
Well, that's a challenge.
Transfer to another. That's not it. Transfer contract to novation. Not one.
That's 11. It's only 4 letters. Complete duration.
Yeah, special, oh, I missed one.
Trustee.
If you come across one that you don't understand, talk to them among yourselves, because that's what they just
10
did. They
across, I
got rid
thought it
of
was
them.
trustee, but then
8 across, what do we do, diligence? Is it?
One's long.
APRAISA.
No, it's no.
Designation.
Due diligence. DUE, DIL, DEMCE. Yeah, keep it. Should be.
So it is due diligence.
I mean, I don't know, that's one kind of.
Due diligence,
Yeah.
Yes.
Then I cannot help you with fourth grade stuff. Y'all have to.
That's why.
Me too. I still use it,
Officer hires insurance.
How far along are you?
Not very.
Okay. We're gonna do like a few more minutes and then we're gonna go over them.
Is attorney?
I asked that was a good, that's pretty good.
What's that?
I made that insurance and I made that buyer.
What do you think, Brian?
I
Think about what
You don't have, you already got
what
a
insurance policies do you have on your property?
Is a due diligence?
And what do they call it? They don't call it
I
homeowner.
think A policies due diligence.
I never opened their thing.
Close.
It's kind of sad that we don't know what kind of, or.
Well, I mean, you know, it's called a homeowner's, but it's casualty, loss.
Oh my goodness.
You remember a TV show that we used to have called Dukes of?
Hazard insurance.
What you say?
Hazard insurance.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Y'all got it? Did y'all get it? Y'all did good.
I'm gonna go home and say, honey, have you paid our hazard insurance? He's gonna say.
Destination is land.
The method by which a contract is transferred to another.
Let's go ahead and we're gonna,
Just to know it's easier than.
okay, let's go ahead and discuss these now,
Thank you.
okay? Let's do the ones across first and then we'll do down. 7 across, needed to protect lender. Title insurance. And we know what title insurance does, correct? So we're good with title insurance. 8 across, time for loan to be approved. Due diligence. Now, let's run real quick about due diligence. In our contracts, we have a due diligence period. There is no time in our contract set forth now for loan approval, correct? And a lot of cases, 3 weeks, 2 weeks is all we give for due diligence. Are you gonna know that your loan is approved in that time frame? Typically, no. So what had you better make sure of during this time? That your loan is really good and you're on the way to getting it closed. If there's any hiccups, you better know about them. Because you need to do what if there's any hiccup or anything that's causing you to question? Get a due diligence extension. So do not let your due diligence in for your buyers and not know that everything's moving forward smoothly. Now, you shouldn't have a problem because they should have already been to their lender before they ever met you and they should have gone through this and there shouldn't be any hiccups within 2 to 3 weeks of this process. But every once in a while, you'll come across that one where there's a separation, there's alimony or child support that they didn't tell the lender about, that they might have to work through and see what can happen. So make sure that they're on a smooth road to a closing before you do diligence in. All your inspections, repairs. You've had a home inspection. Are all repairs supposed to be done before due diligence? No. All you're required is to have negotiating done. So if by due diligence, they've agreed to do certain things and repairs from the home inspection, you're okay. Nothing says that you've got to have all the repairs done by the end of your due diligence. They have to be done by closing. So before your clients go to the settlement table, all the repairs should be done. Now, there are always extenuating circumstances, and that you can get into later, but that's not what we're doing. Okay, 9, probable market value. Appraisal. 10, officer of the court. 12, designation which land can be identified. Thank you. We've talked a lot about legal descriptions, haven't we? Down, 1, confirmation of contract. What do you give on your contracts? Earnest money. That is your good faith money that you put down as your confirmation.
Monies. That's where it
Remember that this is a crossword puzzle. And
Yeah.
every once in a while you have blocks and you need to have certain letters.
Yeah.
So you take something, just, if you know earnest money, you're gonna figure out money's in that one. 2 down, deed of trust signed. I know you talked about it in pre-licensing. You go to the settlement table, you're signing your promissory note. That's your promise to pay back money. And what's the next thing you're signing? Deed of trust, right? And where are you doing this at? The settlement.
Oh. Now, it's starting to make sense.
Come on.
3 down, the method by which a contract is transferred to another.
Assignment.
Assignment. What's the other word? When you put your, what's the word? Alienation. Alienation will fit in that box perfect, but what doesn't it do? It does not fit with due diligence. So it's assignment. 4 down, outline of property. And by which means do we do that typically in North Carolina? Meets and bounds. 5 down, needed to protect owners. Hazard insurance. 6 down, things to complete during the due diligence. 11 down, intend to transfer real property. Deed. How'd y'all do on it?
Amazing.
Okay, we've got to end up real quick, so that you can take a break. But the one thing is that when you're closing, you have given your buyer multiple attorneys to choose from. You're not choosing attorneys, you're recommending attorneys. You gotta make sure they get the offer to purchase, your contract. You gotta make sure that they get, the contact info for your client. There's several things that you gotta make sure they get info on: the seller's loans, the social security numbers. All of this stuff has to be given to the attorney so they can get to the, write up the deed and get everything done. You gotta make sure they get copies of pest inspections. We typically do not give the attorneys copies of home inspections. It's nothing that they need to be concerned about. They need to get buyer's loan info. The closing costs, if they're being paid by the seller or the buyer, they need to be aware of this, so they need to be in contact with everybody. And then you need to set up a date for your settlement. That date can change. We all know that there are reasons that these dates do not stay in effect. Okay? Now, in the next hour when y'all come back, we're gonna talk about some other things for as far as what's gonna happen, for as far as the closing procedures. So that the closing disclosures and procedures that we're gonna do, so we'll finish up that in the next hour. If y'all will, go ahead and take a break, and thank you.